Welcome. We're going to move on to the next panel, and I'm so pleased to be moderating this session with so many, an interesting cross-sector of people. This panel is titled The Future of AI, Implications for Industries, Workforce, and Education. I just want to take a moment. The bios are in, you can find the full bios for all of the panelists and speakers. But I just want to introduce them as I go so that you know when I'm calling and we start this conversation, why we selected this mix of people. So to my left is Jennifer Keating. She's with the University of Pittsburgh. She's a professor in the English and Writing department. She is going to be sharing actually two types of feedback and expertise around the teaching pedagogy for how AI is working its way into university classrooms. But she is also the co-author of a wonderful book called AI and Humanity, with the panelist to her left, Illah Nourbakhsh. And Illah is a roboticist by his expertise, but has done a wide range of so many things. So it's very hard to put a title actually on Illah. Here we have him as professor of robotics, but there's so much more to Illah's background. In this book, it's a wonderful collaboration with the technical and the humanities side of this issue. So I'm going to be also asking Illah, outside of his expertise, to talk about the ethics concerns and really thinking about the ethics around AI. Illah is also a trustee of the Claude Worthington Benedum Foundation. So thank you for that, Illah.
My pleasure.
To Illah's left, we have Saket Sinha, and Saket has come the furthest distance for us here today. Really appreciate you being here. He's a global vice president for Exponential Technologies with IBM, and the private sector technologies business side of this is really compelling to all of us. You've heard a lot about that today. We're going to dig deeper with Saket in this panel. And Erika Klose, she's representing K-12 in West Virginia. So Erika is really this kind of fundamental belief that in the focus forward programming, K-12 education and teachers are really essential to the discussions that we've been having year over year. So with that, I'm going to actually start with Erika on the far end, because this morning's keynote speaker, Kimberly Williams with AWS, made some really clear points about K-12 education. And she also praised the state of West Virginia for being the third state to really develop some guidance and regulations and introduce legislation around AI in the classroom. So why don't you tell us more about that?
Sure, well, thank you. So I work with all pre-K-12 education and pre-K-12 academics at the Department of Education, but prior to that, I worked with computer science and science. And when the conversation around AI really started happening nationally with a larger group of sort of computer science supervisor type folks, we really started talking about how our states and our education systems just weren't really prepared. And we could all see the innovation that was happening, and we understood sort of the wave of innovation that was coming. And so many individuals and entities and organizations started working on this. But we at the department really said, we need to get ahead of this. We believe that it was always easier to come behind and make changes should other legislation or state code or something like that change. So we developed, we started working on guidance, and then had a lot of support from a number of organizations such as Teach AI. That is an organization that provides support and is really looking at AI in education. And so we were encouraged by our state superintendent to really get ahead. And so we did. We worked really hard so that we were ahead. And so I have a copy of it with me, but it's available online. But we released this guidance in January, and it's been incredibly helpful for our county school districts. All of our superintendents have received information about it, but it is very student-centered, human-centered guidance about how our students need to understand fundamentally what is happening with AI when they use an AI tool. What is it doing? It's a great opportunity for us to enforce how students therefore need to have to understand concepts around computer science, But at the same time, it's a tremendous opportunity to enforce like academic integrity, like all those other things that we're talking about, that we want these students to learn and to do the work and understanding what these tools are doing when they're supporting them in that. So it's about balancing risk and opportunity, and that's what it is.
Given the rate of speed that we've been hearing about all day, I assume this will be the first of many guidance documents for K-12.
The first page is my favorite, and it's our version history. I don't think we've ever put a version history in a guidance document before, but we anticipate that there will be many changes, and the next version's already, we're working on it. It will change a lot as time goes on.
Great, thanks for that. Well, it feels natural to switch to Jen now and hear about how you are really thinking about and then shifting your practices at the in the university classroom setting.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think with the development of the large language models like ChatGPT, that's probably what most people are most familiar with, maybe a little bit with DALL-E with the image generation. Academic integrity was one of the first concerns. I think it was Princeton that initially banned the use of chat for their students and quickly had to walk that back. At the University of Pittsburgh, we haven't banned chat or other large language models in student work, but instead what we've asked students to do is to oftentimes cite the use of the tool and to also share the prompt, almost like a cover memo, so that faculty understand the ways in which students are thinking about how to work with it. We haven't necessarily set policies across the university, but instead what we've been doing really since last summer is offering different opportunities for faculty in particular to skill up. These are new technologies that many of our faculty haven't necessarily worked with either. And so this is an opportunity for faculty to think about how these tools are developing, to learn a little bit to the degree that it's possible about the mechanics of how these tools work, but also to think and to challenge themselves to identify ways in which they might be able to use these tools within their pedagogy. Perhaps that's for designing lesson plans, perhaps that's for identifying ways to scale feedback for student work, but more importantly, it's an opportunity for faculty to think deeply and carefully about the different ways in which they can embed the use of these tools in the student's learning experience. So really think about the ways that it's not necessarily just the red flag of academic integrity concerns, but instead thinking about the ways in which this integration of a human-centered, a user-centered design in interacting with these rapidly developing tools gives students opportunities to think about how they might use these tools, really develop some domain expertise that allows them to think carefully about the ways in which this might serve as a work prosthetic of sorts, so that it actually starts to develop a hybrid relationship between the user and the tool in order to identify the ways in which students might be able to use these tools in innovative ways. I have a colleague who plays around and asks the students to ask chat to help her devise spells in a lit class. I have played around with students with call and answer with things like the Illah platform, which is a very early chatbot from the 1960s, and then have them play around with what chat does. I have students read things like Roald Dahl's short story, The Great Grammatizer, which is basically about a really complicated engineered machine that produces pretty mid-range novels from the mid-20th century. But all of these are just different ways in which we can really start to think about the relationships between the tool and the person, identify the kinds of questions that allow us to really develop this tech fluency, as well as a curiosity on how the human-centered relationship to these tools can continue to evolve in order for the students to think about how they build their own skill set, understand innovation in their own practice as developing thinkers, but also as developing professionals, so that when they face the next set of tools well after graduation, they actually have some confidence and have already gained some practice in how they work with these different systems. We've also done some curriculum level work, so we have a digital narrative and interactive design major in my department in the composition program that is partnered with the School of Computer Science and Information. And that allows students to really think across the humanities, across computer science and information systems, as well as library sciences, on innovative ways in which they can attend to projects that are really meaningful for them, but really integrating this humanistic lens, the mode of inquiry, alongside the technical skills of that school.
Thanks, Jen. That was a great description of the humanity side, combined with how you're really integrating this. Can I just ask a quick question? How difficult or easy has this whole process been with faculty?
It's mixed. I mean, I think Pitt has taken some really thoughtful approaches. We've got some history of technology and science faculty, some bioethics faculty who've really been thinking about these questions in these domains for a long time. And my colleague Giovannitti, who's the director of our composition program, has been doing research on automated writing through her career. And so we have some really deep skill that allows us to think about the ways in which our philosophy department, our history department, political science, English, the depth of our research in these areas attend to the social implications of advancing tech, initially in the machine age, but of course, many of those questions are adaptable to the present concerns, even though the technologies are new and powerful. The distinction is the power. But we had things like honoraria for faculty. I think we had 40 faculty sit in on a 3-day teach-in last summer, where faculty could sit and listen to some of our residential experts speaking on the specifications of the LLMs, as well as the potential for how these might impact their teaching, as well as their interface with students. In the Writing Institute, where I also have a seat, we have had multiple workshops through the course of the year. And so we really looked at it as an opportunity to develop our pedagogy. That's a really strong and central practice within the Arts and Science College where I reside. But we've also identified meaningful ways to engage with partners outside the institution, nationally, of course, but even in May, I've roped Illah into a set of workshops between Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh and the University of Western Cape in South Africa, where the concerns within their context, the credentialing needed at this historically Black institution, continuing to move out of the implications of apartheid, have very different concerns pertaining to LLMs and other technological advances for their students and their faculty. And so learning as well on what those concerns might be to enrich our practice and vice versa.
That's great. Thanks for that. So Illah, from the lens of someone who's been involved in this for longer than anybody else in the room, probably.
I'm that old.
He is.
You were that expert at that young of age is what I'm alluding to. Where we all are at a certain phase of learning and really thinking about how this is going to impact us, you've been watching this and being part of how these shifts have been really speeding up over the past few years. Can you just talk, this morning we had some pretty high level but also fascinating information from AWS and all of the sectors that are they're tracking within their own business lines. I'm just going to give you kind of an open-ended opportunity here to say, what should we be thinking about?
So, interesting question. I love open-ended questions, and with all apologies to people who invent technologies to make the human condition better, the thing I've seen since the 80s is basically that this pendulum swings back and forth. And there is epochs when AI advances, and then there are times when the hyperbole of the news media and even professors like me, we overpromise by far and underdeliver, and then people walk back from that, and then the whole thing rinses and repeats about every 12 years. And this has happened at least 3 times in my career, so I'm that old. And what's interesting about this is the real tension is we need the engineers of the future who are going to invent AI to think about the social ramifications of what they're making. Are they making society better? So first of all, you just watched that video, and that's in a way scaremongering, because that video talked about how 60 to 80% of our jobs are directly affected by AI, which immediately makes people think, oh, 60 to 80% of our jobs are going away. Good God. And as you can look at the trucking industry now, which is rampantly lacking in truck drivers because everybody thought trucks are going to drive themselves. False. That same thing's going to happen if people start thinking all these sectors are going to need people. They're going to need people, but the people have to learn how to interact with AI. And the real onus and the real challenge we have is the engineers have to figure out how to stop trying to make AI systems that replace people and how to start making AI systems that work with a human being. And one of the things you saw on there was statistics around productivity from a pretty famous Harvard study that said our productivity is rapidly increasing thanks to AI. Now, I could say that about email too. Email dramatically increased our productivity. But I would like to ask the Harvard authors to publish a study on our quality of life. Because the real question is, did email make our lives better? Not did it make us more productive. Did AI make our lives better? And that's up to the engineers that we're training today. So what we do at the university, in my case, I'm dealing with first-year computer science and artificial intelligence students. We have degrees at Carnegie Mellon in AI, in machine learning, and in computer science. So you can pick your poison in terms of an excellent, high-paying career. The challenge is, what do you teach them so that as the engineer of the future, they guide the arc of this technology's development toward not just productivity, toward quality of life, towards us having jobs, enjoying our lives, and actually using the technology in a way that gives us more agency, more sense of fulfillment. And that's not necessarily what engineers do all the time. So the way we try and go there is we sit down with the students and teach them, believe it or not, ethics. We go back to Aristotle, teach them about character-based ethics and freedom and information. We teach them about deontological reasoning and about utilitarianism and consequentialism. We have them go read the Techno-Optimist Manifesto online from one of the more crazy venture funds to explain how when that gentleman says, this is Mark Andreessen, that if you don't develop technology as fast as possible, you're killing people because future technologies will only save lives. We have them pick that apart and think about the idea that, no, you have to design the technology with people, for people. That's how you save lives. You don't do it by moving at sprinting speed and ignoring people. But we have to take apart those issues because it's too convenient to go online and simply read about the power of technology without thinking about the power of humanity. And so really you're giving them a grammar, the fluency that Jen talked about, to think fluently about technology's ramifications on society and be able to talk the talk. So that when their supervisor tells them to do X, they can say, wait, are you sure that kind of surveillance is okay with people? Why don't we do a survey? Why don't we work with the community group and co-design with them instead? So we design something that solves their problem and doesn't surveil on them. So I'm always worried about this question of tempering our enthusiasm for technology with our valuing of humanity and with a kind of fluency that can drive us to develop it the right way instead of the wrong way.
Yeah, Illah, you're such a special roboticist because you have such a grounded sense of the humanity side of it, but you also have a very strong sense of the rural aspects of inequity. Can you talk a bit about that?
This is one of the best joys of my life, is to serve on the Benedum Foundation board, because we focus so deeply on the question of rural chance, which Gail talked about eloquently. The fact that we need in rural America to have just as much of a chance as urban America does to make a difference to the future of society. What's interesting about rural equity, and to me the role that future technology has, is if we do future technology right, I actually believe it's one of those leapfrog technologies. You know, you've read about leapfrog technologies in Central Africa where the cell phone came into a place that never had copper wires. Well, in a way, AI, data analytics, and this idea of shoulder-to-shoulder design, where communities at risk work directly with developers to develop the technologies we need, rural America is perfect for that. And you don't need to be in an urban infrastructure, urban environment to build systems that are all virtual, they're all online anyway. So as long as we can do the right thing, which people like Mr. Green here, I saw him earlier, have worked on for years, which is have the infrastructure in the state so that we can have high-speed bandwidth everywhere. As long as we nail those issues, it's a leapfrog opportunity for rural America to help actually bend the arc of the future in terms of how our technology is going to influence society. Otherwise, what we do is we end up in a society where urban America has designed the technology, and it's going to fit them better. It's going to be the shoe that fits their feet better than fitting the feet of people in rural America, and we don't want that.
Yeah, and we were so thrilled that Senator Capito could be with us earlier this morning to talk about the broadband piece and how dedicated she and others are in bringing it to West Virginia. So now shifting to the industry side. So having a title like Exponential Technologies really does frighten me in asking you a question here. You know, when we did the prep call for this, Saket, you just had so many interesting ways that you were really communicating on where industry is going in these ways.
Right.
So why don't you share some of your thoughts after hearing the K-12 college and then what Illah just said.
Sure. I had the pleasure of talking to you yesterday, and we shared some sound bites. But first of all, thanks a lot for inviting me here. I think this is what I'm seeing here is the collective bringing of education, state legislators, universities, and technologists all coming together. This is the right way to think about an impact of technology going forward. I come from the industry. I see mostly the commercial side of these technologies, how they are being used. And knowing that we all live in an economic world, from the root level of economic activity to how it contributes to a region or jurisdictions as a country GDP, they're all driven by efficiency and productivity. Throughout ages, throughout civilization, as civilization has progressed because they have found a better way of doing things, right? From, you study history, it's the same thing. Today also, as these technologies are coming up, our biggest question that we are answering to our clients is that how can I use it effectively to become more productive, more efficient, more profitable, so that I can drive some of the profit back to new innovation and new ways of doing things, back to your question of how can we improve human life. But at the same time, not from that holistic sense, but the commercials that are, the industry that is using this thing, they're driven by their own metrics. A CEO is driven by the metrics of the organizations. People underneath working this technology are driven by the KPIs that they are responsible for. So they will continue to use technology and exploit it in a way that drives their immediate scorecard, immediate reason. So that increases the rampant use, that increases the promise of over-delivery that you talked about, and that increases the innovation that also fuels many of these things. Now, I find that as we are working at country level and organizations level, they are extremely keen to see how this can help them reduce cost of operations, for example, these technologies, how it can help them improve productivity. Many organizations equate productivity to human labor, but there are some organizations that look at productivity saying that it is a productivity of the employee so that we can get more done rather than reduce human labor. But at the same time, I think the rewards of using this technology going forward as we try to build our next generation workforce, which starts from education and start from early schooling and early technologies and teaching, we are definitely have a fundamental belief that the fact-based learning that we all accustomed and grew up with, those are waning in light of these technologies coming up. It's more about discovery-based learning, right? So things about abstract thinking, things about lateral thinking, things about humanity, arts, things about empathy. These are core elements of next generational workforce that will come, that will survive and live with these technologies and deploy them for productive use, for commercial activities and things like that. And that's the learning that we try to bring in, and we have seen many large organizations. I work in financial services, all banks across the globe, and they have started this program of forcing their engineers coming up from STEM learning curve and others to really go and read and become more broad in their knowledge of arts, humanities, and increase that lateral thinking and get trained on things, not just programming, but it's about new ways of solving problems, new ways of collaboration, new ways of people to exist and coexist together, those kind of a thing. So this is the level, I think, from any state policy or country policy level of stuff. This is the place where these kind of thinking should evolve and develop. That will prepare the new workforce for the next generation. As technology keeps evolving, it will evolve. But how do we live with it, and how do we extract maximum mileage and benefit out of it? That's entirely on us. How we define that journey, we can define and control. We can't control how the technology will evolve. It will continue evolving. The other day I shared a very practical example, and this will help you understand also. We were in a large bank, and we were working with a fintech company that had come to demonstrate the advancement of technology. It's in beta stealth mode right now, so I can't take the name. They were saying that, okay, from an organization perspective, you want to define a new HR system with these characteristics. They called people all together responsible for developing a new HR system, made them sit in a room, and said, you just talk about what do you want to see in the system. And while they were talking, there is a voice recorder that is recording all the conversation. Few people got up, they drew some rudimentary drawings on the white paper wall or whatever. That was also, it's an e-sheet, that kind of thing they drew up. And they said, okay, I need this system, I need this data, I need this information to flow, all very unstructured drawing with a lot of sound bites here and there and writing things like that. After the meeting was over, this company took its picture of those things and all fed it into the software technology that they are developing. It created a new system design. They brought the team back and told them that, hey, does this meet your requirement? This is how information will flow. This is how your HR system will design. This is how it will look on the glass. And when you did some small amount of refinement, they pushed a button and it generated entire system application code. So that's the level of automation we are going. And it's not only, I've just took an example of an HR system with design, but the same thing is being advocated and going out in real estate, and going out in things, day-to-day things that we do. You want to design your kitchen, you want to design your house, you want to plan your vacation. Everything can be designed from that. But what it will lack is the human tone and empathy. And that's what we need to inculcate now in our education system so that we will be able to use this technology effectively to make our lives easier and better, to your point.
Yeah, it reminds me of a comment this morning that the speaker was saying. We've gone from mechanical innovations to innovations around technology, and this discovery learning concept that you're bringing up seems to, echo that same approach. I just still worry when you think about how financial services, there's really great innovative ways that fintechs are creating new products and new ways that we are banking. But I think back, especially in a state like West Virginia, where character lending was such a big part of our culture, and even from FICO scores on, it's software driven, and that's not always the easiest or most accessible way for people to get financial services. Do you have any kind of reaction to that?
Yeah, sure. See, the technology will be there and will be used. So the FICO score that we are doing, but now with the help of AI, we can get more understand about the same customers. So the new systems, new fintechs that are coming, there's a company by the name of Home Lending Pal, for example. I'm just referencing them. People can check them out. And they're going beyond just FICO score to understand the true nature of the borrower in terms of how, and whether that borrower should be given a loan even though their FICO score could be low. And what they're doing is that they're again using the technology today of AI and others to understand the profile of the customer at a human level as extent possible, and being able to make that determination of knowing that, okay, even though this person has a low FICO score, they can still be given a loan, because the honesty, integrity of the person in terms of meeting the borrower's need and stuff like that are more true, and they can fulfill that. So, and this is an opportunity from a commercial perspective. This company is trying to extract or exploit an opportunity using AI, that if I use AI to understand the human much better than just calculating a mathematical formula for a score, I might be able to create opportunities of lending to a more broader set of audience. And they're using that and monetizing it, and now going into underprivileged sections of the society and helping financial institutions say that, you come to my platform because we have a better way of qualifying an individual rather than just their FICO score.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good example. Illah.
There's a paper, if you guys are interested in this question of just decision-making by AI, there's an incredible document. It's called The Alignment Problem. It's multi-chapter, but the first 2 chapters are outstanding. You should be able to find it on Google or your favorite search engine. Even AltaVista probably brings it up. That was a joke. Called The Alignment Problem, and it deep dives into the history of mathematicians trying to figure out how do we create fairness with AI-based decision-making around credit, around predictive policing, around probation assignation. And it's really interesting. It takes you through a walk with mathematics and computer scientists. And I'm not going to steal the punchline, but the punchline is really powerful and really worthy of knowledge. It's something judges now read, actually, when they're thinking about where they can use computation and where they can't. One other example I want to just throw out, I think everything you said is fantastic, Saket. The lateral thinking, I just want to add one bit, which is critical inquiry turns out to be a really big deal. Because when people use AI in my classes, it's wild. I told them, write your journal entry. If you use AI, let me know how you use it. And so they'll write this journal entry, and then at the bottom of it, it says, I just used AI to make grammatical corrections. Then I read the thing, and it's got nonsense in it. Like, it's got fiction. And I sit down with them and go, read this sentence. Do you agree with this sentence? And they read it and go, no. I go, okay, what did you ask chat? And they said, I just told it to improve my writing. I'm like, okay, can you show me the thing you put into chat and the thing that came out of chat? And they look at it, and they're horrified. And the interesting thing about it is use it, but you better have enough critical chops to figure out if whatever it did you agree with or not. And so, God be with us the day a medical practitioner who's not well-trained uses it to diagnose. Because they don't have enough knowledge to know if it's doing it right or not. We're done. And as you know, pilots have to fly an airplane manually every so often, because if you just keep using the autopilot, you atrophy. And then the day when the autopilot doesn't work right, we're all done. So that issue of critical inquiry, being able to identify misinformation, that's not going anywhere, because these systems are fallacious at times. They're very powerful, but boy, do we need that lateral thinking if we're able to use them in a way that reins in misinformation. Otherwise, we end up accidentally generating all sorts of nonsense.
Because there's an innate laziness among humans that would say, go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, and I think this, I really appreciate the example, Saket, that you offer in terms of the prospect of developing more robust AI tools for evaluation of loans, the critical thinking in terms of the output when a student puts in language that they're not happy with in one way or another. But ultimately, we're coming back to the quality of the data, right? So we interviewed a colleague at DeepMind who shared that he was recently, a couple years ago, this was before the pandemic, but he was denied a mortgage. This is someone who has more money than I could ever possibly imagine as a working class girl born in Ireland. But he shared that he had been denied a mortgage, and he had the network to actually call the bank and say, I think your algorithm is off, right? Because he worked at DeepMind. And so that call out allowed this individual to be reevaluated most likely by hand, not by the same busted algorithm. And he shared gleefully that he was indeed approved for that mortgage. But thinking about the ways in which the data and the ways in which he could offer commentary on the lack of robustness for that, as well as the students who are not critically reading their own work that they are submitting under their own authorship in the class, brings us back to what the source material is, what the corpus is, what we're scraping, and then thinking about what the output is. And so when we're thinking about these classes with K through 12 students, with students in universities, what we're asking them to do is to take ownership over the question, the inquiry, and really building out that muscle, that skill to ask the penetrating questions so that we don't fall subject to the tool. We can use our privilege, we can use our power, whatever that might be, leverage it, ask the question, and really demand that whatever the data is, whatever the corpus is that's used to inform the algorithmic tool that we're using is valid, that the questions are meaningful to the problem or the question at hand, and that we're not constantly dealing with a good enough tool that's actually not really designed for the task at hand.
No, Jen, I fully agree with you. One of the things that we encounter these days as organizations adopt AI, especially generative AI, when they talk about ChatGPT or any other generative AI, the cost of training that model from prompt engineering, we use prompt engineer to train the model so that it can give you higher confidence output, as well as fine-tuning where you go inside the model to train it. That cost is very, very high. And in regulated environments like financial services, for example, you can't do error, and you need to have a 99.9% confident output. To get to that level from 60% confident output versus 99.9%, it's exponentially higher in terms of cost. And then it comes back to the science of lateral thinking is how would you train that model, what kind of language you use to train the model, what kind of prompts you're giving to the model to the train. For example, today if you use DALL-E and say that, hey, create me a picture, a painting of a dog, it will create a painting of a dog. But if you want to have a certain way that painting should look with color and hues and emotion and facial expression and things like that, you will have to do a more sophisticated, almost a thesis of writing before it can generate. And then machines are not there yet. The models are not there. They are only able to create things that they have been trained on and the data points that they contain. So from an education point of view, how do you do those level of thinking to express what you want as an output? That's the lateral thinking. That's the discovery part of the education that we need to emphasize more and more in our educational system so that these technologies can produce results that are more opportune for you rather than give errors or rather than increase the cost of training them.
Yeah, agreed. Erika, do you want to say anything on that? And then
I
we'll
think
end the
that one
panel
of the
here.
things when we start looking at AI in the classroom that is so important, and we're trying to figure out how all of these tools can really be used. So many of the tools that are coming at us right now in education, and they are many, and they are new every day, but so many of those tools are tools for quizzing, maybe for tutoring, for things like that. And I think the conversation that we're having is that there's very much a place for that. So you could imagine, say, in an elementary school classroom where students move in stations. They go from station to station to station, which is a very common thing that occurs in our classrooms. You can imagine there could be a station for that. There could be a station. Now, that could be an incredibly rich experience for that student if they're getting instantaneous feedback on whatever it is that they're trying to do. That feedback could also be going to the educator, giving that educator instantaneous feedback. That's amazing. But I think what's so important there is to look at what that then creates, right? It creates time for discovery learning, time for experiential learning, time for all sorts of other things to happen that allow our students to have that broader education. And I think that when we look at it in the classroom right now, it's not in any way that it's going to replace our educator, but it should free up time for our educator to do much deeper, larger thinking projects with our students. And I think to the same end, it gives, it allows our educators the time to realize, I could use this to help me create the ideas for those more experiential learning opportunities, and seeing the opportunity in that as opposed to the risk of creating a very simple assignment that a student could just plug into chat and have it, do the assignment for them. So I think that we need to frame what we're going to do with AI in the classroom in a way that allows for that broader, deeper way of thinking and problem solving and creativity for our students, so that they can then approach those problems that they have later on in the same way.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for
Erika,
making that
something
so
that got me started thinking what you're saying is that as you are enabling students to do better discovery and learning, these technology also open up adjacent or supplemental areas of new knowledge that can be educated and trained. For example, as this AI and exponential technologies expand and usage, you also need a counterbalancing discipline of study related to whether they are doing their jobs right, what are the policies, what are the entitlement of data that people will be using on these technologies. Security aspect of it, we talked about cybersecurity, but security is not only about online breaches, but security of the entitled data that people should be privileged to view, privacy, digital identity. All of those opens up a whole new area of discipline that needs more robust and breadth of knowledge so that we can create balances as these technologies become more prevalent. We have right amount of control so that we can balance that in the society. Otherwise, they can be taken advantage of in the industry in a very negative way.
We are so close on time. 30 seconds.
Sure. The last thing I just really appreciate about this idea, Erika, is the notion in which the undercurrent is pushing against this concept of replacement, and really thinking about the ways in which work with these tools allows us to really think about symbiosis, and the ways in which this allows for creative improvisation, innovation, or a return to the tactile in ways that really allows us to think about the benefits afforded with these tools that can clear the space for other things to continue to hold our attention in this notion of quality, right? Quality of life, quality of education, the sparkle of curiosity, and the ways in which that can actually be a lifelong feature of our humanity, not necessarily something that we're subjecting to a tool.
Yeah, thanks for the concrete examples. I'm just going to end reading a sentence from the preface of this book, AI and Humanity. Illah and Jen write, "We want to help build a shared intellectual space that can be combined with structured opportunities to consider the world as it changes and to envision a world in which AI systems are harnessed for the betterment of society rather than perpetuating the ills." So if you want to read more, this is just a great book. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.